Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about diseases that wildlife can transmit to your cattle. Not something we can control all the time, but it's something I think you need to be made aware of, and it's some pretty interesting material, if I do say so myself.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com. This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. We're out here at Tar Waters today, north of Topeka, Kansas, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about diseases that wildlife can create in cattle herds. And there are many different types of diseases that we think about and talk about, but I'm going to break them down into some of our parasites, some of our viruses, and then some of the different things such as tuberculosis, which are more like bacterial. The first two I want to talk about are the parasite types of things. And Bailey ascaris is a roundworm that raccoons carry. So I'm here in front of the live traps and the cat-proof raccoon traps and different things that you can do to trap coons, or to let you understand that when raccoons carry this roundworm in their feces, and we've had cases where people have had raccoons dig holes through tarps and silage, silages, and where they defecate, and then the roundworm is transmitted from the raccoon feces to cattle. If you have raccoons that are in hay piles or up in hay mounts and different things to that nature, those raccoons can be carrying Bailey ascaris. Now, what does that cause in cattle? It can cause things in cattle. I've seen it cause things in outdoor hog operations where it will affect the central nervous system of cattle, and it can actually get into the brain or to the vertebral column, or into the spinal cord, and cause paralysis in cattle, in swine, and different animals to that nature. Another type of parasite that we need to talk about is Neospora, and Neospora is something that is carried in the feces of dogs and coyotes. And this one affects cattle in a different manner than Bailey ascaris from the raccoon. Neospora, the life cycle, it has to pass through the canine, which again, coyote or dog. If they defecate in somewhere where cattle out on a pasture, or if they defecate somewhere where cattle in a feed bunk, or someplace where cattle are consume that feces, then the cattle become infected with Neospora. Neospora infections result in abortions in cows, and it can also create some of the central nervous system disorders as well. But the big thing that we see is that we can see that the cattle will abort. So when we see spontaneous abortions, that's one of the differentials that will come up. The thing with Neospora is once the cattle become infected, they're infected for life. We can vaccinate cattle for Neospora and different things to prevent disease and that. So the two big parasites that I'm talking about, Bailey ascaris, which can come from the raccoon. The second one is Neospora, which can come from coyotes and from dogs. So understanding, controlling that in canines, if you have cow dogs and things of that nature, can also become important. When we come back, we're going to talk about tuberculosis and brucellosis in endemic herds of deer and elk and bison, things to that nature. We'll also talk about some of our foodborne pathogens, and then we'll wrap up with rabies. You're watching DocTalk, and I'm glad you joined us today.
Ag Promo Source is a unique group of marketing specialists with one mission: help your ag business grow. Each affiliate has their own area of expertise, and they work together to bring you advice, products, and services. To get started, visit agpromosource.com. Ag Promo Source. Together we grow.
healthy cows start with the new hired hand automatic livestock sprayer. Rancher invented to provide an efficient alternative to pour-on and injectable parasite management systems. The portable design allows cattle to treat themselves head to hoof. Strategic device placement with pass-through activation technology takes the stress out of parasite treatment for cattle and the rancher, leaving more time to tend to other vital tasks on the farm. To learn more, visit cowsprayer.com. The new hired hand makes healthy cows easy.
As fourth-generation farmers themselves, Heinen Brothers Ag Service understands the risk and rewards of farming. So when it comes to quality aerial and ground application, fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia, call Heinen Brothers Ag today, 800-760-4964.
This segment brought to you by Santa Fe Trail Meats in Overbrook. Visit us online at sftmeats.com.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson. I'm at Kansas State University, but obviously today we're out in the real world, and we're here at Tar Waters, North Topeka, who's been a sponsor of DocTalk and Ag AM in Kansas for a long time, and we really appreciate the partnership that we have with them. And they have a wonderful store, wonderful supply, many things here that, like many people's local farming homes or Orslins or Tar Waters, things that you can find. And they're fun for me to go to. I could spend all day in a store like this. But anyway, we just got done talking about Bailey ascaris, which is a roundworm in raccoons. We talked about Neospora that can be transmitted from coyotes and dogs to cattle, cause abortions. Another thing that we have, it's probably when we get into the Midwest and into the South, it's not a big deal to us or an understanding, but when we start getting into the northern states and we think about tuberculosis outbreaks that they've had in Michigan and tuberculosis due to the deer population having endemic TB, or when we start to think about brucellosis, obviously brucellosis is an issue in our national parks and some of the places where we have herds of elk and herds of bison that have brucella issues, that when we start to graze the public lands, we can have contamination or exposure to our beef herds. So it's not something we think about on a day-to-day basis, but there's a lot of ranchers in this country that have to deal with it. When we think about tuberculosis and talk about tuberculosis, it's a mycobacterium, meaning that it's not a bacteria. Yonis and tuberculosis are both mycobacterium that we deal with on a day-to-day basis within the beef industry. Our biggest cause of tuberculosis, or biggest risk class of cattle for tuberculosis that we see presented at slaughter from feedlots generally comes from cattle of Mexican origin. Okay, those are cattle that are coming to what we call quarantine feed yards. They do not leave those yards. They do not ever reproduce. Those animals have to be castrated before they come in the United States. The heifers have to be spayed. But tuberculosis is a nose-to-nose transmission, and when we talk about the tuberculosis outbreaks that we saw in Michigan with the TB in the deer herds, the wildlife of the deer going nose-to-nose with the cattle or any kind of secretion that could be presented can cause a problem. Brucellosis and leptospirosis are our two reproductive diseases that can be passed from wildlife to cattle. And when we think about brucellosis, the big problem that we have in the United States is, generally speaking, the endemic herds of wildlife of elk and bison, that if cattle come in contact when they're grazing public lands with vaginal discharge or placentas or things to that nature, the brucella can be passed from elk and bison to cattle. Leptospirosis, this can be passed from many different animals can carry lepto, and it generally comes from urine contamination of a water supply and the cattle drinking it. So when we vaccinate for lepto, there's a reason why we go out and we vaccinate for Vibrio and lepto in our cow herd, because many animals such as deer and raccoon and different things can carry lepto and when they urinate in the stream or urinate in the pond or urinate in water tanks, they can pass it. So many different things that can be passed from animals to cattle. We probably don't think about it on a day-to-day basis, but we're going to talk about a few more when we come back.
Sure Crop Fertilizers was started by my father, Don Sherman, and my mother, Shirley Sherman. Family business that started in the 80s. We predominantly focus on plant nutrients and what we can do to give growers better responses with the fertilizer dollars that they do, and what we can do to make those things work better for the grower. We're based out of Seneca, Kansas. We work with growers in their soil analysis to figure out what they need, and then we can put those in a blend that gives them the best results, and so that we can deliver that direct to their farm so that they have those nutrients where they need them, when they need them, and so that they can apply them in a manner that's very efficient to them and works well in their planting systems and what they're doing. Sure Crop Fertilizers has been around for a long time. We always say we're big enough to take care of everything you need, but yet we're small enough to do it quickly. You can get a hold of us at 1-800-635-4743. Our website is surecropfertilizers.com, and you can always email me at Corey@surecropfertilizers.com, and with any questions you have, we'll be glad to answer and work with you.
I'm Rexanne Struve, veterinarian in Western Iowa. I have a veterinary clinic and started doing stem cell therapy on dogs in August of 2014. And after the first 2 dogs, after 3 weeks, I saw such dramatic results. I said, hey, I have arthritis. I have joints that really need this help. Where can I go to get this done? I had stem cell therapy done in November of 2014 on my finger joints, my hip, and the ball of my left foot, all of which I'd had real severe problems with. Saw a pretty dramatic improvement in a short amount of time. I would certainly recommend that somebody don't wait until I'm in the position that I was in with the damage already done to my joints. I encourage veterinarians to use it for their animals, and I encourage anybody who sees this video, if you have need, get in contact with these people, because this is a phenomenal place to have this done.
Did you know long-range planning through the checkoff can help keep your business profitable? To successfully pass on cattle operations from one generation to the next, it's important to promote beef and keep farms and ranches profitable. Your beef checkoff helps do that.
We're Jurger's Cattle Company, cow-calf operation primarily, with a small replacement heifer operation. We started our operation in 2012, but we expanded on my father-in-law's operation, who started in the 70s, and built off his expertise and his knowledge, and have taken and grown it to what it is today. We span about 4 different counties in North and South Carolina, running about 1,000 acres with 350 roughly head of mama cows. My husband and I and my son and my father-in-law operate together. About 2 years ago, we decided to make the switch to become all-natural producers. And what that means is it's a certain standard of quality and life for not only the calves that become part of the food source and the meat itself, but the cows also. Beef checkoff is important for our operation in a twofold way. First is marketing, creating a customer for us. We sell directly to feedlots, but our end game is the consumer. We want to create a product for the consumer that they desire, that they want to go back to the supermarket or steakhouse and they want more beef. Everybody knows the slogan, beef is what's for dinner, but it falls even more than that in that they've raised consumer awareness in quality, which is important to us because we try to focus heavily on our genetics. That's a main component of our operation, and the checkoff has allowed us to do that by promoting a product that's important to the consumer, that it's good quality, it's safe, it's nutritious, and they're gonna want to be return customers.
Hi, I'm Kim Mandarin with Hardy Insurance. I'm here to help you with all of your farm and ranch needs. When it comes to protecting your operation and your family, you need a name you can trust at a price you can afford. Call me today or visit hardyaviationins.com.
I'm Derek Sawyer, and I'm a 4th-generation Kansas farmer. I've known all my life I wanted to farm this land near McPherson, which was my grandfather's before me.
I'm Katie Sawyer, a journalist who never dreamed I'd live my life on the farm until I met Derek.
We've married our worlds to help educate consumers about the rural lifestyle and all that farmers do to provide safe and affordable food.
Watch our story and the stories of other young Kansas food producers at kansaslivingmagazine.com/meetafarmer.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Hey folks, Dr. Dan here at DocTalk. Thanks for joining us today. I am at Kansas State University where I serve as the Jones Professor of Production Medicine and Epidemiology and teach a lot of things with production medicine. And some of the things that we talk about is food safety. And when we talk about food safety, the big things that we're focused on are E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter control within both pre-harvest in cattle and post-harvest, when we have all of the different hurdles and things that we can do to prevent foodborne pathogens from winding up in the feces of cattle, which then we prevent if we get a fleck of manure, that we prevent the contamination of hamburger, steaks, different things to that nature. Well, when we start talking about animals or wildlife transmitting pathogens to cattle, we tend to think about diseases like we've talked about with Bailey ascaris from raccoons, or tuberculosis from deer, or brucella from bison, that can cause abortions, cause central nervous system disorders and disease. But we also have animals that can carry foodborne pathogens such as E. coli, Salmonella, and Campylobacter. And one of the big things with raccoons is that they can carry Salmonella. And so when we start to think about Salmonella, raccoons in the hay pile, or raccoons that come up into the feed yard and eat out of the feed bunk and defecate in the feed bunk, control of wildlife on our feedlot operations is important. Cats, there's a study that came out that showed that cats can actually carry E. coli 0157H7. Probably isn't going to cause disease in the cat or disease in the cow, but it winds up as a foodborne pathogen. So when we start having a lot of feral cats, things to that nature around your farm or at the feed yard, it's some of the things that we have to understand, that these animals, whether it's rodents, cats, feral hogs, different things that can carry E. coli. One of the biggest outbreaks that we've seen with lettuce, when we track back in lettuce, romaine lettuce and iceberg lettuce, when we looked at E. coli outbreaks, it was tracked back to feces from feral hogs and deer. So when we start to think about controlling foodborne pathogens in cattle, we also have to worry about controlling wildlife interaction. Now obviously when we're talking about ducks and geese and them landing on ponds, on marshes, when they're landing on our lagoons and feed yards, it just makes me stop and think a lot of times that when we want to blame the beef industry, or we want to get after the beef industry about control, how are we going to control for a lot of the things that if we're going to have cattle out on pastures, drinking out of ponds, they're going to be exposed to these different diseases and these foodborne pathogens. And I just want to, some of the ones that we can control are the feral cats, the feral hogs, controlling wildlife that are coming up that are eating out of feed bunks, things to that nature. Just understanding that those animals can be carrying foodborne pathogens, which probably aren't good for our beef industry. When we come back, we're going to wrap up with rabies, which is something that can not only affect the cattle, but can affect you. You're watching DocTalk, and I'm glad you joined us.
No matter where, no matter why, the Veterinary Health Center at Kansas State University is committed to providing quality patient care to animals and exceptional customer service to their owners. From routine checkups to emergency and specialty care, our world-renowned specialists and experienced professionals are here to discover, to teach, and to heal.
Let us know.
How can I help?
How can we help?
Hey folks, Dr. Dan from DocTalk here. Thanks for joining me for our Cattle First tip today, sponsored by Boehringer Ingelheim Vet Medica. And we're talking about injection sites. And injection sites, all of our injections go in the neck. Here's a picture of the injection site triangle that you can see is underneath the nuchal ligament, above the vertebral column, and in front of the point of the shoulder. This injection site triangle is where we will put all of our injections for cattle. Now, if we're going to do 2 injections in that area, we put about a hand's width apart between the 2 injections. Nothing goes in the top butt, nothing in the round, nothing over the ribs. Now, if you're going to do a sub-Q injection, you go in at a 45-degree angle with a 5/8 inch or 1/2 inch needle. If you're going to do an intramuscular injection, you go in perpendicular to the calf with an 1 to 1.5 inch length needle. This is your Cattle First tip.
Tarwater Farm and Home has been family owned and operated since its beginning in 1978. What you need for farm and agriculture, lawn and garden, clothing and footwear, and so much more. You'll be surprised at what you'll find in this huge store. They have what you need and lots of it. So come take a look. You'll discover that customer service is first and foremost. Always has been with the Tarwaters. Tarwater Farm and Home, 4107 North Topeka Boulevard.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook or Twitter.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson. We're here at Tarwaters, and we're talking about different diseases that animals can cause in cattle. And when we talk about some of the diseases like tuberculosis, brucellosis, and things that can cause cattle become ill or abort or have CNS, that's one thing. Foodborne pathogens such as Salmonella, E. coli, that can cause not necessarily disease in the cattle, but cause disease from cattle to humans, controlling feral cats, feral hogs, raccoons, different things to that nature in our feed sources. The last one I'm going to talk about today is rabies. While it's not very common, when we do see rabies, it's generally a cow getting bit on the nose from a rabid skunk. The skunk wobbles across the feed yard pen or across the pasture, the cow goes up, sniffs it, gets bit on the nose, and we get rabies. Cattle, for the most part, when they present with rabies, that takes from the time they get bit, it takes around 2 weeks for the animals to show clinical signs, and from that point it takes about 5 days for cattle to die. But if the cattle are extremely aggressive, if they have a roar because they'll start to get paralysis of their voice box, it's not a normal beller, but they're constantly making vocalization and noises, they'll run a fever, okay? But aggressive cattle chasing you up the fence, roar, running a fever, start to put lots of saliva and drool, put rabies on the top of your differential. The other thing that will mimic rabies is choke, and you will confuse choke with a rabid animal. Choke is when a cow swallows a hedge apple or a horse that swallows a peach pit down in the southeast. Those are the types of things that will get animals choked. They can't swallow, they produce saliva, they don't eat or drink. That's not rabies. Rabies, again, if you think you have rabies, get your veterinarian out on the farm. Let them make the call. Then we'll do the proper diagnostics to make sure that if it is rabies, you'll in fact be able to help. Once rabies is identified, we have some pretty basic protocols. If you or a family member have been exposed, it's not something that's aerosolized, so if you're just in the general area of the animal to be worried about, usually it's if you get bit and we puncture the skin, or if you have a cut, something to that nature, is what we would term exposure. Once we determine the level of exposure that you or your family might have had, we'll then work with our health department, and they will get you with the proper vaccinations, proper immunoglobulin treatments, or safeguards. The big thing is that if you think you have rabies from an animal, from in a cow, make sure you get your veterinarian and make sure that you get in for the proper diagnosis. Thanks for watching DocTalk today. I hope you enjoyed it. It was kind of put together, but it's one of those things that I thought was really important for you to understand, depending on where you live, and appreciate the things that people go through in understanding the diseases wildlife can create in cattle. Remember, always work with your local veterinarian. If you want to know more about what we do here at DocTalk, you can find us on the web at www.doctalktv.com. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson, and I'll see you down the road.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.